This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
This is the new Sony A7 Mark V, and it's been 4 years in the making, and boy was it worth the wait. They've got a new AI processing chip, they have a new semi-stack sensor, and some really incredible features that I'm going to go over to help you decide if it's worth the update from the Mark IV, or if you're good right where you are. Maybe I'll save you some money. I'm going to go over sports and wildlife testing, also some portraits, and talk about how the features are going to impact your photos. Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I make photo reviews on gear. I give tips, and I try to make it fun and easy to understand. If you're into that type of thing, you might want to get your notifications on so that you know when I make a new video, or you can check me out on Instagram where I make all of my new videos available. I tell you when they drop, and I also give some fun tips there. First, I want to talk about my first impressions, and that's that it looks almost exactly like the Mark IV, but one thing that I noticed right away is that the screen is bigger, fattier, chunkier, and that's because it flips, it tilts, and it also somersaults. So this is a fully articulating screen, which is nice. That means that you can turn it around, you can film yourself, you can flip it if you're shooting down low or up high. I love that it has this new screen on it. The other thing that really struck me is that they did add a lot of new features to this, which I'll get into later, but also they managed to keep it under $3,000. Now they told me it's going to be between about $2,700 and $3,000. I don't have that final price yet. If I do, by the time this airs, I'll put it somewhere. It's supposed to be out by the end of 2025. We'll see if that happens, but I'm excited for people. I think this is going to be the camera to get in 2025. Let's talk about the specs and features of this. So it still has a 33 megapixel sensor. The megapixels have not changed, but now it has a semi-stacked sensor, not fully stacked like an Alpha 1 or an Alpha 9, but it's still going to be faster in the processing. And also the processor is new.
The new Bionz XR2 processor has a built-in AI unit for enhanced autofocus, color accuracy, and auto white balance stability. It's faster and it's more efficient.
The shutter speed has changed. The maximum shutter speed is 1/16,000th of a second. So the Mark IV was 1/8,000th of a second, so we got a full stop more. That's pretty impressive. Also, this now has 30 frames per second blackout free. The Mark IV was 10 frames per second, so that's a huge improvement. It's a lot faster. It has subject detection autofocus. It also has pre-capture, which is great for sports and wildlife. It's got the fully flippy screen, which I already mentioned before, and it now has 7.5 stops of in-body image stabilization over the 5.5 stops of the Mark IV, but it does say that 7.5 stops is in the center of the frame, and it's 6.5 stops on the periphery. It also has 4K 60 video with no crop, with 7K oversampling, so the video has also improved quite a bit. I want to thank my sponsor, Squarespace. If you want your own website, portfolio, gallery, store, check it out because it's so easy to do. If you can drag and drop, you can make your own website. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. Thanks, Squarespace. Wow, you can already see it's working so much better. The Mark IV was putting a box around the whole head or the whole bird, but this is just locking onto the eye. Even trying to lock on the eye when the mallard is kind of turned away from me, it's really incredible.
Notice how precisely the A7 Mark V focuses compared to the Mark IV. It locks onto the mallard's eye as it turns away from me and then quickly reacquires its target once it turns back towards me. It was even able to track a fast and low-flying duck. Pretty impressive.
I just thought that gull was an osprey, but no way, Chelsea, you're dreaming.
Frank was able to bring the A7 Mark V to the Yukon football game to test subject detection and autofocus. Look, it's locking onto the subject's eyes. Even Jonathan the husky is getting subject recognition in auto because it's recognizing an animal. You can see that the subject targeting is finding his eyes and his face. And now we're going to go down to animal detection and try to detect the most difficult animal of all, Pixel. Look at her dark eyes and her dark fur. It's tracking her eyes even when she looks away and looks back. It's finding the subject's eye again and focusing perfectly. It works really well, and there's a clear improvement from the Mark IV. But how does it work when you have athletes with helmets and gear and people moving in front of them? Well, it still locks on and finds the subject even when someone is passing in front of them. You're not going to miss your important shot if you're shooting with the Mark V.
How are all these new features going to impact portraits? Well, I took pictures of Kayla here, and I was immediately impressed how well the autofocus worked when detecting her eyes. It locked onto her eyes even when I was using this thick filter. And it's going to be helpful in a number of situations. If you're shooting your model, then you're going to get more photos in focus, even if they're moving around. And you're really going to appreciate that if you're an events photographer or a wedding photographer. We took some pictures side by side of the Mark IV and the Mark V with me walking towards the camera and moving around to see how well the autofocus worked. And there was a notable improvement with the Mark V. Look at the A7 Mark V. You have 65 images and 9 of them are out of focus even though I'm turning around and moving all about. Here you can see the green box tracking and it's keeping on my eye even when I turn around and then face the camera again. The Mark IV got 43 images and 11 were out of focus, so 74%. And you can see here the green box is larger on my head instead of just focusing specifically on my eye. Now let's do a side-by-side so you can see a little better how the A7 Mark V is more accurate and precise with its autofocus. The Mark V also has 7.5 stops of in-body image stabilization. So if you're in an environment where you're taking low light portraits, you're going to be able to hand hold and get a cleaner photo. Not only that, but it has 16 stops of dynamic range, and that means if you have a high contrast environment, you're going to have cleaner shadows and highlights and be able to recover them more. And think about the applications of that. If you're photographing a wedding and you have a bright white dress next to a black suit, that dynamic range is really going to come in handy. It also will come in handy with sports and wildlife, which I don't think I mentioned. Oftentimes you're taking a photo of a dark bird on a bright sky and you need to recover the shadows or the highlights. Sony also said that they improved the battery life. So again, if you're shooting portraits or an event and you need more battery life, they managed to do it. Now it has the same battery, but they told me that their new processing chip is more efficient, and also they made the choice to not completely black out the screen and put it to sleep. I noticed this because I'm used to like hitting the shutter to keep my camera awake. Now it dims the screen instead of putting it to sleep. And apparently it's saving energy and it's also taking less energy to wake it back up. So you'll notice that, and I appreciate that little difference in that feature. Their auto white balance is now AI in some way. And so you can see in the pictures of me walking towards the camera, I'm in artificial lighting, and you tell me, do you see a difference? I did a test chart side by side in artificial lighting, and I noticed that the Mark V looked a little cleaner and a little more true to life colors. Not a huge difference, but it is there. We've talked a lot about the features, but we haven't talked much about image quality. Look at these photos side by side. The image quality looks great on both. They both have 33 megapixels. And though the Mark V has a new sensor, I'm not seeing a huge difference in image quality. You can see them side by side here. But the image quality is still great. That was never really a problem with the Mark IV. The 33 megapixels is enough for cropping in wildlife and sports, and you still get a clean image. Look at these bird pictures here that I took. I tested them in low light as well, and again, I didn't see a huge difference in noise. Honestly, noise isn't something that I worry about a lot these days because the software for processing noise and reducing it has come so far and is really good. It's not a huge issue in these cameras. I would call that a wash as well. Let's talk briefly about video. You get 4K 60 full frame and you get 4K 120 at a 1.5 times crop. That's an improvement. Now, I'm not going to go too much into video because Tony is doing a full review on the video of this camera, so check it out. I'm going to put a link to his video in the description down below if you want to know more about the video capabilities of the A7 Mark V. To sum it up, who is this camera for? Well,
Unlike the Mark IV, I think it's gained a ton of versatility because not only is it great for portraits and events, it's also now excellent for wildlife and sports. I think this is a great camera for somebody who wants that type of versatility, who wants to photograph action, but doesn't want to spend over $6,000 on an Alpha 1 or an Alpha 9. This at sub $3,000 is the sweet spot. And a big question I'm asking is if it's worth the upgrade for you. And if you think about everything I've told you, I think it's going to be a personal decision for you. Are you taking pictures of action or portraits and sometimes missing a shot that you wish was in focus? Then I think that you're going to appreciate the upgrade in the autofocus ability, the tracking ability. And if you're interested in video, I think that you'll appreciate the video upgrades as well. If you want to sell your Mark IV and get the Mark V, that's something that I would recommend. I think it's a big jump. But I also think if you're content with what you're taking pictures of and your photos look fine, you don't have to upgrade every time. Be comfortable where you're at or use your extra money to buy a Sony lens. You could do that too. Thanks so much for watching. If you have more questions or more things that you'd like me to test, let me know down in the comments down below. I am going to get the Canon R6 Mark III, so I'll be comparing it. If there's any other comparisons you'd like to see, let me know. Check out my Instagram where I have the latest on which videos I'm making, and I take polls and questions there so you can get more involved in my video making process. And of course, thank you Squarespace for making this video possible and for making beautiful websites possible to more people because it's easy to make. And if you want to show off your pictures in a clean, professional way, you need your own Squarespace website. Go there and try it out for free. You don't have to remember to cancel. Just see if you like it. And if you do, go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. See you next time.